Well, hey everyone, it is a new month, so let's talk about the books that I read in the month of February. Hi, my name is Jonathan, and this is Mr. Pearson Talks Books. Let's talk about the books that I read in February. And what I'm going to do is, rather than tell you in the order that I read them, I'm going to talk about them from my most favorite book all the way to the ones that didn't necessarily work for me or weren't necessarily my favorites. So, first up is a book called The Treasure of Ocean Parkway by Sarvenaz Tash. And this particular book, it's a story of two kids who live in an apartment building in New York, and they have a podcast that they do where they talk about the residents of the apartment building where they live. And while they're trying to come up with a new idea for their podcast episodes, another neighbor girl named Thea comes over and asks them for help because she seems to have stumbled upon a treasure hunt that her grandfather left for them, or left for someone in her family, and she needs their help in order to solve the clues. And the girls, or the kids that are doing the podcast, they're really excited because this might be a new podcast episode, but everybody seems to have trust issues, and Thea, the new girl, isn't sure if she's going to be around to be able to make friends with them. And as they progress through, you find out that there is some bad blood that runs in Thea's family, particularly between her dad and her grandfather. And so that adds another layer to the mystery. I want to tell you, this has been my absolute favorite book that I have read, not just in February, but out of all of the books that I've read in 2026. This book deals with some familial, there we go, tensions. But there are also some scenes where Thea's grandfather is dealing with dementia. And as a result of the dementia, he doesn't always remember even his own children or his grandchildren. And there were moments in there that were just absolutely wonderful and tender. And I recently, my mom passed away about 2 years ago with dementia. So these scenes in this book were very fresh and very raw for me. And there were times where I'd be driving as I'm listening to this book where I was crying because of just how sweet and wonderful these moments were. Now, the Treasure of Ocean Parkway, it happens to be the sequel to another book, which we'll talk about later down the list. Absolutely loved it. Gave it 5 stars. If I could give it 10 stars, I would. It was a great book. The next book that I read, my next favorite one, is a book called What Happened Then by Erin Soderberg Downing. And this particular book I came across because it's been nominated for the Edgar Award for middle grade fiction. And the Edgar Award is an award that's given to mystery fiction. And this particular story is about a family who has kind of been broken. Like, there's brothers and sisters, and they don't talk to each other, so the cousins don't know each other. They have very rare interactions. Well, one sister invites all of the families back to the family island for one last summer together. And while she's on the island, while they're all there, this sister tells everybody that she has Lou Gehrig's disease, or ALS. And as a result, she might not be able to keep the island. And so she wants them to have one last summer together as they get the island ready to sell it to a new owner. And while they're doing that, two cousins stumble across some journal entries. And it seems to be written by a sibling of the family that nobody will talk about. And they find these little pieces of this journal that are hidden all around the island. And so they are, the boy and the girl are trying to find the pieces of this journal and figure out what exactly happened, and why is it that anytime this missing sister is brought up in conversation, that everybody shuts down or gets upset or does whatever. Now, this book was fantastic. Solving the mystery as to what happened and why it broke the family apart was incredible. When I was in high school, I had to read a book called The Prince of Tides by Pat Conroy. Now, if you're familiar with that book, you know that that book deals with a lot of really gruesome, awful family trauma that kind of split the family apart because of some of the things that they went through. And wow, while the book What Happened Then is nowhere close to being as traumatic or graphic as The Prince of Tides, it still reminded me a great deal of that. And that book by Pat Conroy, I don't know if I'll read it again, but it did shape me, and it has stuck with me for many years. But What Happened Then is fantastic. And while I don't necessarily want it to win the Edgar Award, if it did, I wouldn't be upset. The next one that I read was another mystery, and that was called The Secrets of the Broken House by Taryn Souders. And this is a small town mystery where this lady in town, they find her dead. There's a boy and his friends, and they go to work for her because they want to get a boat so they can go fishing. And one day they show up to work after working for her for one day and it not going well. They show up for work and the old lady is lying dead on the floor. And everybody in town had a reason to want her dead and or had threatened her at some point just because of how cranky and awful she is. And so now this group of friends has to try to figure out who it was that killed this lady, particularly because the aunt or a relation of one of the kids in the group is being suspected because it looks like her rent on the coffee shop that she runs is going to be raised. And they have to get to the bottom of it. I love small town mysteries. This one was so good. Taryn Souders, she wrote another book called Coop Knows the Scoop. Very similar vibe. If you like the book 3 Times Lucky by Sheila Turnage, I think is how you say her last name, you will love this book. So definitely check it out. All right. My fourth favorite book is actually the first one in the series of The Treasure of Ocean Parkway. And this is called The Queen of Ocean Parkway. And in this, the two kids who run the podcast in the second one, they meet up. And one day, some of their neighbors, they hear them talking and they're getting this argument about don't go see the fortune teller machine. Well, one of the family members decides, you know what, I'm going to do it. We need the money. I'm going to do it. And so she goes and she disappears. And it turns out that this particular family has a curse put on them by this fortune telling machine, where every so many years on a certain date, if you go to the fortune telling machine, it's going to make you disappear. You'll get lots of money, but you'll disappear and you won't have them in your life anymore. And so our two investigative reporters from the podcast are now trying to figure out where this lady went and how they can get her back. And so there are some time travel elements. There's some family relationship elements. There's a lot of what happens if you change something in the past? How will that affect the future? Very similar to the book Westfallen that I love so much. I liked this book. I thought it was really good. It was interesting. I love the characters. I do want to say, though, if I had read this one first, The Treasure of Ocean Parkway, I'm not sure that I would have continued on to read The Queen of Ocean Parkway, which would have been a tragedy because The Queen of Ocean Parkway, or I'm sorry, The Treasure of, I'm getting the titles all mixed up. We are talking about The Queen of Ocean Parkway because that's the name of the building they live in. If I had read that one first, I don't know that I would have gone on to The Treasure. That's what I'm trying to say. Number 5 was a book called The Haunting of Bellington Cottage. And this one is actually, this one has been nominated for a Stoker Award. So just like the Edgar Award is for mystery, the Stoker Award is for horror. And in this one, there is a family. There's a girl who her best friend moved to New York, and so she was trying to impress some other girls, and she fell and broke her arm. Her family and a friend of theirs are going to stay in this ski lodge over winter break or something, and she's very excited because she loves spooks. She hears the house is haunted and stuff, And then her friend shows up and things have changed. And so there's the whole conflict of how do we deal with the fact that things have changed? And then a ghost shows up. And so they have to figure out who the ghost is and what it is that she wants. It was an interesting book. I really liked it. I thought there were some things that worked well with it. There were some other things that didn't care for too much. The ghost tends to throw some tantrums. It reminded me a great deal of Lindsay Curry's books, where if you've ever read any of those, you know that most of them involve a ghost, and the kids that are involved have to figure out how to solve it. There was one character in the book who was always telling bad puns and dad jokes, so that part I really enjoyed. But that was The Haunting of Bellington Cottage. After that, I read an adult book, and this was called Batman Revolution, and it's by John Jackson Miller. John Jackson Miller writes a lot of media tie-in fiction. He wrote a lot of Star Wars stuff, did some Star Wars comics. He wrote one of my favorite Star Wars books, and that's Kenobi, which is a story of Obi-Wan Kenobi after he takes Luke to Tatooine. But we're getting off topic there. Anyway, Batman Revolution it's a story that's set in between the Batman movie that was directed by Tim Burton, and then Batman Returns, the one that had Danny DeVito as the Penguin. And so this story's set in the middle there, and it involves a guy who, his name is Edward, I think, or something along those lines, who has a really bad day. And as a result, he kind of goes off the rail. He's really smart. He knows lots of stuff. He tells puzzles. He gets fashioned as the Riddler. And then he gets involved with some militias who are trying to overthrow the city in some pretty horrific ways. And Batman has to figure out how to stop him, how to solve the puzzles, and how to stop him. I liked this book. It was over 500 pages, so I thought it kind of stretched out a little bit too long. It was a fun read, especially if you like Batman. There was another one before that called Batman Resurrection, which dealt with Clayface and some other characters. So it really nicely ties in those two movies and kind of gives you, introduce you to Selina Kyle. You may know that name as the Catwoman. Overall, it's pretty good. After that, the next book on my list, in order that I like, is a book by Anna James, and this is called Alice with a Y. And this is the story of Alice, who spells her name with a Y, who has to move in with her grandmother, who happens to also be named Alice. And one day she gets an invitation, and Alice, the young girl, intercepts it, thinks it's for her, and ends up going to Wonderland, where she has to stop a war between the sun and the moon. And so things are constantly going back and forth between day and night. They're fighting over an hour that was taken, and one side wants it back and the other side wants to keep it because it's being wasted, and she's waiting for the time being. And there's just it was a very silly book, and I think that was the intention, because Alice in Wonderland was a very silly book. It reminded me a great deal of the book The Phantom Tollbooth. I put it a little lower on my list because honestly, there wasn't a lot of substance to it. It was a fun, enjoyable, light read. Sometimes you just need one of those. Then the eighth book on the list here is, this one was also nominated for the Edgar Award. And this is the Midwatch Institute for Wayward Girls by Judith Rossell. And this is the story of an orphan girl who she's caused way too many problems. And so the nuns decide to take her to a special school. And she's like really not happy about it. But come to find out, it's a special school that trains girls to be secret agents. And so they get all this training in like camouflage and Morse code and all of these different things. And then one day a lady goes missing and they have to figure out what happened to her. It was a fun book. Kind of reminded me of the book City Spies by James Ponti. Just not quite as enjoyable. It was still a good book. I can see why it was nominated. I'm just not sure I was the target audience for it. Number 9 on my list here is a book by Chris Grabenstein, and this is called Mrs. Penny Pickles' Puzzle Quest. Try saying that 3 times fast. And this is the story of a brother who's in high school. He's getting ready to graduate high school, and his middle school brother who loves puzzles, and they don't get along at all. And so their father comes up with this plan that if they can go on a road trip similar to the one that he and his brothers went on, he'll give them a brand new truck. And just as they're about to set out on the road trip, they get invited to be a part of Mrs. Penny Pickles' Puzzle Quest, where they have to solve all of these different puzzles. And if they are the first one to do it, they get to win $1 million. And along the way, obviously, as these kind of stories go, the brothers start to appreciate each other better. It was a good book. It was not Escape from Mr. Lemoncello's Library, which is fantastic. That's the best book I think Chris Grabenstein has ever written. It's the book that made me like him. So I kind of went into it with those expectations, and because I had those expectations, I was a little let down. The puzzles are fun. The characters are interesting, especially the 2 guys who are trying to be a part of the quest, but aren't necessarily really invited to be a part. They're the foils, the bad guys. So that was kind of fun. I think the ending wrapped up a little too neatly in the way that it happened. I don't want to say anything because in case you want to read it. Overall, not my favorite Chris Grabenstein book, but definitely still worth the read. And then the last book, and this was actually the last book I read in February. This is another book that was nominated for the Stoker Award, and that was called The Ghost of Bitterfly Bay by Mary Averling. And this book is unique because rather than it be kids who are haunted by ghosts, it's the ghost who are haunting the kids. And there's a girl in here, and she is haunting this family that's staying at a cottage. But then her brother and her best friend Kit go missing, and she thinks they've been taken by somebody who haunts her, a ghost being haunted by a ghost called Longfingers. And so she has to, with the help of the human girl, figure out how to get her brother and her friend back. And the interesting thing about this book is it was a ghost story for most of it, but then it kind of switched. And once it switched over, that's when I started to like it. The ghost stuff was kind of but once it switched over, it kind of became I hate to use this word, it was kind of a study or meditation on grief. There was an accident, and that's how the girl became a ghost. And there was involving her mother, and her father went away. And so she has a lot of grief, a lot of anger, a lot of things that she's trying to deal with. And all of that plays into the second half. And so it kind of felt like 2 different books. I think they worked okay together. The ghost story stuff was all right. There were times where it kind of felt like it dragged. Not a bad book at all. So don't hear me saying that. I did enjoy my time reading it, but it was not my favorite book. I feel like I'm saying that a lot. I'm trying to be kind, because if an author writes a book, they put a lot of effort into it. I have never written a book. I've written papers. I've written things like that. I've never written a book, so I don't want to sit here and be like, this was a terrible book, right? That's not me. Sometimes a book works for somebody, and sometimes it doesn't. This one just happened to not work as well for me. There we go. That's a good way to put it. So there you are. Those are my 10 favorite books, ranked from my favorite book all the way down to a book that didn't necessarily work for me. So there we go. That's 10 books. But I want to know, what was your favorite book that you read in the month of February? Have you read any of the books that I shared? And what are your thoughts on those? And if you want to see the books that I am planning to read for middle grade March, that's the readathon that we're doing right now. The video that I posted where I talk about the books I'm going to read is going to pop up here in a second. If you haven't already done so, please subscribe. We are over 230 subscribers at this point, getting closer to 250. My students are always asking, hey, how many do you have? Because I told them If we reach 500, I'll have a party for them. So if you could help me out with that, if you could help them out, that'd be great. And as always, my name is Jonathan. I'll see you next time.